happened 3 years ago, but it still haunts me. I had never believed in anything supernatural, just stories people told to scare kids. Skinwalkers were myths to me, a ghost story whispered around campfires. But I know better now. It was a late autumn evening. My cousin Jake and I had driven deep into the Arizona desert near Navajo territory. We were hunting an annual trip that had become a tradition since we were kids. That year, we were aiming to camp out for a few nights, far from the city, just us and the wilderness. We set up camp near a small, dried-up creek bed. The air was still, too still for the time of year, and I noticed it first. No wind, no sounds. Even the insects and birds seemed to avoid the area. It was eerie, but Jake just laughed it off. "You're getting soft," he joked, but I could see something unsettled him too. That night, the first night, I heard it. It was around 2 a.m. when I woke up to a faint noise outside the tent. At first, I thought it was Jake getting up to relieve himself. But his sleeping bag was still next to mine, undisturbed. I strained my ears, trying to make sense of the sound. It was a soft, rhythmic padding, like something walking in circles around the campsite. Coyote, I thought. They're common in these parts. Then the footsteps changed. What started as soft animal padding became deliberate, heavy human steps, crunching the dry leaves and twigs. My heart pounded in my chest, and I held my breath, listening. The footsteps stopped just outside the tent, and I could feel a presence standing there, waiting. I didn't move. Neither did Jake. "Jake," I whispered, barely able to form the word. He didn't answer. I slowly reached out to shake him, but my hand froze in midair. From outside the tent, I heard my voice. My own voice. "Jake," it said. A perfect mimic. "Come out here." I froze, my blood turning to ice. It wasn't just the sound of my voice. It was the way it said his name. Like a recording, flat and empty, devoid of any emotion. It repeated the word again, slightly more insistent. "Jake." This time, Jake woke up. His eyes were wide, and I could tell he heard it too. We sat there in the darkness, paralyzed. He whispered, "What the hell was that?" "I don't know," I mouthed back, but my voice was shaking. We stayed like that for what felt like hours, listening to the thing outside pacing around the tent. Sometimes it would stop and call out to Jake, and sometimes to me. And each time, it used our own voices. Finally, as dawn began to break, the footsteps faded into the distance. We didn't dare move until the sunlight filtered through the tent. When we finally stepped outside, everything looked normal. No tracks, no signs that anything had been there at all. Jake wanted to pack up and leave, but I convinced him to stay, telling myself it had to be some kind of prank. Or maybe we were both just hearing things in the wind. We didn't talk much that day, but there was a tension between us. We were both scared, though neither of us would admit it. The second night was worse. It started the same way, soft footsteps circling the camp. But this time, something changed. The air was thick, suffocating, and I could feel a presence watching us. Then we heard it again, that voice. My voice, calling Jake's name. But this time, it didn't stay outside. Without warning, something pressed against the side of the tent. Its shape humanoid but wrong, twisted, too tall. The fabric stretched inward as if it was testing the strength of the tent, and Jake scrambled for his rifle. His hands were shaking too much to load it, and all I could do was watch, frozen in place. Then came the sound, a low growl, mixed with a laugh. Something guttural, not human. "Come out," it whispered, in both our voices at once. The words were garbled, broken, as if it was struggling to mimic us. The thing started scratching at the tent, long claws dragging across the fabric. We were trapped, too terrified to make a run for it. The smell of rot filled the air, and I gagged. Then, as suddenly as it started, the scratching stopped. Silence. I turned to Jake, and he was deathly pale. He whispered that he had heard stories about skinwalkers, witches that could take the form of animals or people. I wanted to tell him he was crazy, but deep down, I knew. Whatever was outside wasn't human. We spent the rest of the night sitting back to back, rifles in hand, praying the thing wouldn't come back. At dawn, we didn't waste a second. We packed up everything and got the hell out of there. As we drove away, I looked back one last time. Standing at the edge of the trees was a tall figure, gaunt and hunched over. Its eyes glowed a sickly yellow, and its skin was stretched thin over its bones. As we rounded the corner, I swear I saw it smile. I haven't been back to those woods since. Jake refuses to talk about it at all, pretends it never happened. But I still hear those footsteps sometimes, late at night, just outside my window. And sometimes, I hear my own voice calling back to me.